The Haunting Road. I was driving on a lost and lonely road, late at night. I had taken a wrong turn somewhere and ended up in the middle of nowhere. The road was narrow, winding, and surrounded by dense woods. The only light came from my headlights, which barely pierced the darkness. I checked my phone, hoping to find a signal or a map, but it was dead. I cursed myself for not charging it before I left. I had no idea where I was or how to get back to civilization. I felt a surge of panic but tried to calm myself down. Maybe I would find a gas station or a motel along the way. Maybe someone would help me out. I kept driving, hoping for a sign of life. But the road seemed endless, and the woods seemed sinister. I heard strange noises from the trees, like rustling, growling, and howling. I wondered what kind of animals lived there, and if they were dangerous. I hoped they would stay away from me. Suddenly, I saw something in the road ahead. It looked like a person, standing in the middle of the lane. I slowed down, wondering who it was and what they were doing there. Maybe they needed help, or maybe they could help me. As I got closer, I realized it was not a person at all. It was a scarecrow, dressed in ragged clothes and straw hat. It had a wooden cross for a body and a pumpkin for a head. It had 2 holes for eyes and a jagged mouth carved into it. It was holding a sign that read, "Welcome to Hell." I felt a chill run down my spine. What kind of sick joke was this? Who would put a scarecrow in the road like that? And why would they write such a creepy message? I decided to ignore it and drive past it. Maybe it was just some pranksters trying to scare people. The old road stretched out before me like a twisted serpent, its winding path leading me deeper into the heart of darkness. I had been driving for hours, but there was no sign of civilization. The only sound was the hum of my engine and the occasional rustle of leaves in the trees. I had lost my way hours ago, and I was starting to feel uneasy. The road was narrow and winding, and the trees on either side loomed over me like silent sentinels. Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me. I turned around slowly, expecting to see an animal, but there was nothing there. Then I heard the noise again. It was a low growl coming from the woods behind me. I drove as fast as I could, but the growling sound was still behind me. I could hear it getting closer and closer. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw a pair of glowing red eyes staring at me from the darkness. I panicked and slammed on the brakes. The car skidded to a halt, and I was thrown forward against the steering wheel. I looked in the rearview mirror again, but the eyes were gone. I was terrified. I wanted to get out of this place as soon as possible. So I started to drive again. After a few minutes, I saw a light in the distance. I hurried towards it, hoping it was a house or a gas station. I got out of the car and walked towards it, but as I got closer, I realized that it was a cemetery. I stopped at the edge of the cemetery and looked around. The headstones were old and weathered, and the grass was overgrown. I felt a chill run down my spine. I decided to turn back, but then I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. I turned around and saw a figure standing behind one of the headstones. The figure was tall and thin, and it was wearing a long white cloak. Its face was hidden in the shadows, but I could see its glowing red eyes. The figure started to walk towards me, and I felt my heart pounding in my chest. I turned and ran, but the figure was faster. It reached out with its long, bony fingers and grabbed my arm. I screamed and tried to pull away, but the figure's grip was too strong. It dragged me into the cemetery, towards the darkest corner. I didn't know what to do. I was trapped, and there was no one to help me. I tried to pull away, but the figure's grip was too strong. I dug my heels into the ground, trying to slow it down, but it was no use. The figure dragged me closer and closer to the darkest corner of the cemetery. I knew that if it got me there, I would be doomed. I had to find a way to escape. I looked around desperately for something to use as a weapon. I saw a rock on the ground and quickly picked it up. I turned to face the figure, raising the rock in the air. "Let me go!" I shouted. The figure stopped and looked at me with its glowing red eyes. It opened its mouth to speak, but I didn't give it a chance. I threw the rock at the figure's head with all my might. The rock hit it square in the forehead, and it let out a screech of pain. The figure stumbled backwards, and I took advantage of the opportunity. I broke free from its grip and ran as fast as I could. I could hear the figure chasing after me, but I didn't look back. I just ran towards my car. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. I collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. I looked around and saw that the figure was gone. I thought I had escaped. What a fool I am. I stood up and walked to my car. I opened my car door and sat inside with a relief. I started to drive the car, but suddenly the figure came before the car. I was shocked. It turned its head towards me and looked at me with its hollow eyes. It smiled with its wicked mouth and raised its sign higher. It spoke in a raspy voice that sounded like nails on a chalkboard. "Welcome to hell," it said. I screamed and slammed on the brakes. I skidded to a halt, just inches away from the figure. I couldn't believe what I saw and heard. It was impossible. It laughed and reached out its arms towards me, as if to grab me. It had long claws for fingers that looked sharp enough to cut through metal. "Welcome to hell," it repeated. I panicked and tried to reverse my car, but it was too late. The figure was faster than me. It jumped on the hood of my car and smashed the windshield with its claws. It crawled inside and grabbed me by the throat. "Welcome to hell," it said for the last time. I felt its breath on my face. I thought, this is it. It was my end. But then, something miraculous happened. A bright light flashed in front of my eyes, blinding me and the figure. A loud horn sounded in my ears, deafening me and the figure. A huge force hit my car from front, pushing me and the figure. It was another car, coming from the opposite direction. It had seen my headlights and honked its horn to warn me of its presence, but it was too late to avoid a collision. It rammed into my car at full speed, causing both vehicles to spin out of control. The impact dislodged the figure from my car and flung it into the air. It flew over the trees and disappeared into the night sky. I never saw it again. I blacked out for a moment, then regained consciousness. I felt pain all over my body, but I was alive. I looked around and saw the other car next to mine, both wrecked beyond repair. The driver of the other car was also alive, but injured badly. He had blood on his face and his arm was broken. He looked at me with a mix of relief and regret. "Are you okay?" he asked me weakly. "I think so," I said hoarsely. "What happened?" he asked me. "I don't know," I lied. I didn't want to tell him about the figure. He wouldn't believe me anyway. He would think I was crazy or hallucinating. We waited for help to arrive, hoping someone would find us soon. I cannot believe myself I was lucky to be alive. Please subscribe our channel and stay tuned to know what happened next. Do like the video and comment yes if you love the story.